in my previous video, I discussed a domestic violence situation that me and my sister and my mother had gone through. My dad had a drug problem and a drinking problem, and when he was high and drunk, him and my mother used to go at it, like they would fight. That really traumatized me as a kid, and I talk all about that in my previous video. In this video, I do want to follow up on that to discuss how we got out of that situation, although the drama didn't stop there once we left that situation. So what ended up happening, this is from my perspective. I don't have the whole story because I don't know 100% my mom's side of it, but just what I experienced, what I remember. This occurred when I was in Philly, in Pennsylvania, and we had moved from Korea to America not long before this. I had just started 3rd grade, so I was attending school in Philly. It was so ghetto, like freaking the hood, you guys. OMG, going to school with these ratchet little kids. And then we were living with my grandmom at the time, my dad's mother. My dad was studying at the time to become a Jehovah's Witness. Most of his siblings had converted to Jehovah's Witness religion, including his mom, and the only one of his siblings that wasn't was my Uncle Ben, who guys are going to hear about a lot on this channel. Uncle Benny was like my best friend, but at that time he wasn't. So my Uncle Benny, who has the same birthday as me, he's 30, like 2 years older than I am, he lived in a different state. So he would come and visit once in a while and just take us kids, me, my sister, and my cousin, he would just take us to go do fun stuff. And so he was like the fun uncle, you know? Yeah, but this uncle wasn't married. He didn't have any children. So he had time to like hang out with us. So when he would come to town from Washington, D.C., where he lived and worked, he would just take us off with him. So me and my sister and my cousin spent a really fun day chilling with my uncle, and we had a great time. We were at my cousin's house. We were like eating something, watching movies, chilling. Like we were building this awesome memory. But then my uncle got this cryptic call from my mother sometime in the evening. I don't even think we had eaten dinner yet. And she was like, yeah, I need you to bring the girls home because they're going to the Kingdom Hall or something like that. Like, I don't know what her excuse was, but she told them to bring us back to the house early. I think we were actually going to like spend the night there or something. I don't know, because we were at my cousin's house. And this cousin is the daughter of my father's older sister. So he only has one sister, and that sister has only one child, and that child is my first cousin that you'll hear me talking about a lot. So go back home. My dad and my grandmom, my other cousin that lived with my grandmom at that time, who's a boy, he's like 8 years older than me. I think all of them were getting dressed to go to the Kingdom Hall, which is the Jehovah's Witness religion version of church. So I remember that my sister and I had these ugly ass dresses laid on the bed that my dad had picked out for us to wear. And they used to like dresses alike a lot. People always thought we were like twins. I remember looking at the dresses and thinking like I didn't want to wear them because the shoes that my father had bought for us to wear to the hall were too small for us. They were too tight. And my dad had this weird like fetish about small feet on women. So he didn't want us to wear shoes that were the right size for us. He would like buy us shoes that were like too tight. Like it wasn't too small, but it just fit your foot. Like you could get your foot in there and then you had no room to wiggle your toes around. He would buy us shoes like that because he didn't want us to grow into the shoes and then for our feet to get really big. So I remember like feeling like, oh man, you guys called us back here to change into these uncomfortable clothes and have to go sit in the hall and like a statue, and so boring. Great. Ruined my whole freaking day that I had with my uncle for this. As I was having this dreaded feeling of like having to get dressed to go to the hall with my dad, my mother told us in Korean, no, don't put those dresses on. You're not going to the hall with them. So I was like, well then what the hell did you like bring us home for? And we could have just stayed with Uncle Benny and went and had fun. And she's like, no, 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 you're not going to the hall. I already told your dad. But my dad's like, oh, are you sure you guys don't want to come? Amma is how you say mom in Korean, and that's what we call my mom. So I'm like, yeah, no, Amma said we can't go, so we can't go. So it's like, oh, whatever, okay, she must just want you guys to keep her company today, whatever. I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know if they had fought that day. It didn't seem like there was any tension in the air, but I have no clue what happened. But I recall my dad going around the banister to go down the stairs to leave the house, and he was all decked out in his little suit that he was going to wear to the hall, looking good. And he like gave us a kiss, and on his way down the hall, I remember him looking up at me and saying, I love you, and then me saying, I love you too, Daddy. And like, that was the last thing I remember actually saying to my father. I did see my dad after that a couple times, but I don't remember anything we talked about. I just, they're not good memories. Not because of my dad, just because of the situation that we were in, but that is like the vivid memory that I have of the words I last said to my dad. And it was him saying, I love you, and me saying, I love you back to him, and watching him walk down the stairs. And then as soon as they left the house, like soon as the car pulled away from the house, my mother, it was like a switch went off, and then she just went into high gear and just switched. And she's like speaking Korean, because she only spoke Korean to us. So she's telling us, hurry up, pack your bags, we gotta go. And then we're like, where are we going? And she's like, we have to go visit a friend of mine. We have to go right now. It's an emergency. We have to leave. I'm like, so then why do we need to pack our bags? And she's like, because we're not going to be back tonight. So pack your things and just one book bag. I don't want you to bring a bunch of stuff. Just bring one book bag of stuff. Let's go fast. Now we got to go, right? So me and my sister, like, we didn't really know what to think. On the one hand, I felt like something was wrong. But on the other hand, I felt like whatever was wrong, it wasn't permanent. Like, it'll work out. You know, it felt like that. It felt like she's just being secretive because she's being dramatic, you know? Maybe she doesn't want my dad to know that she's visiting this friend. So, getting all our stuff together. The things that I felt was important to bring along at that time weren't clothing. It was like my collections of stuff. Like, I had an obsession with stickers at that time, and I remember having booklets full of stickers that I collected from school, and like if someone gave me stickers or whatever, books, I don't know, and I had collected them all into like a booklet. So I like grabbed that, and a lot of the things that I was grabbing was things like that had like nostalgic meaning to me, not so much they were important things. So, and my mom wasn't telling us what to pack. She wasn't like, get your toiletries, get your, you know, underclothes together. She didn't even pack the stuff for us. Think about how old we are at the time. We're in elementary school, okay? You're telling a 7 and 8 year old to pack bags. You know that you need them to pack certain things, but you're not telling them for whatever reason, okay? This is my mom. We pack our bags. She rushes us out of the house. It's nighttime. We are walking through the city of Philadelphia, North Philly, the hood. A Chinese lady and 2 random Mexican-looking kids walking down the street with this lady. Oh, I remember actually while we were packing, she was like on the phone talking to someone in English. And I'm like, who is she talking to? Because she was getting directions of like how to get to the place. But she wasn't talking to them in a manner that sounded like she was talking to someone she was familiar with. So I'm like, what is going on, you know? Somehow I remember us trekking through like parking lots, and I don't even know, like just walking and walking and walking until we got to a bus, and then getting on the bus, feeling really uncomfortable on the bus. There was like tons of black people on the bus, and at that time, because we were just fresh from Korea, like we hadn't been there that long, maybe a few months, I was just getting used to being around nothing but black people. Like I had been around all Koreans and then international people on the army base and at school, but they weren't people from the hood. They were like, you know, they were soldiers and like their families. So, you know, they're people of a certain caliber. You know what I'm saying? This was like, no, like ignorant hood niggas, like hood. So I was scared. Like, I didn't know what the hell was going on. My mom, she's so hilarious because she's so fearless. Like, most Korean people are like terrified of like being around too many black people at one time. Even black people who aren't hood. Like, they're just black people, they're just scared of them. My mother, she gave a damn. Like, she don't care. She just chill with whoever she want to chill with, and she doesn't like hold things against you because you're a certain race. Even people who I hear her saying kind of racist things about, she'll still be friends with them. Like, she'll like talk shit about them but still like them at the same time. Like, she'll be like, oh, I love my Indian friends, even though they wipe their asses with their hands, they're really nice. Like, she'll say things like that, and I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? What's wrong with you? She gets us on this bus. We're trekking to wherever the hell this bus is taking us to. I don't freaking know. I don't recognize none of these places. Terrified. I don't know if I can ask questions. Like, I think I tried to ask her questions, like, what's your friend's name? Like, I was asking her things like that. Like, who is it? Did we ever meet this friend? Like, where are we going? I don't remember traveling this far to any friends of yours. So where are we going? Are they Korean people? And she was just being really secretive and really vague. I don't know what was going on in my sister's mind at the time, because like I said, she's like a year and a half younger than me. So she probably was more confused than I was. And I don't know how analytical my sister's mind was at that time, because I have a tendency to think because I think a certain way, everyone else thinks the same way. And now I know that that's not true. I was just intensely in my mind trying to analyze what is going on, trying to figure this out. And my sister, I don't really remember like what her demeanor was at the time, so I will have to ask her about that. So we get to a place that I recall being like a very dark building that looked like it had no windows. Like, it was just, I don't know, just like a dark apartment building with like something on the downstairs ground floor that looked like an abandoned store or something. I don't know. And then having to be buzzed into the building. And then finally, when we got inside, I realized this is not a friend's house. Like, we were at a battered woman's shelter. And I didn't know what that was, that there was even such a thing. I don't know why we were there, but like, I remember sitting in a room and having to translate for my mother to one of these counselors that was at the place doing the intake information. And just, I'm learning as I'm translating what the fuck is going on. Like, my mom explaining to me why we're there, her situation, whatever, information about my dad. That's how I'm realizing, oh my God, we ran away from my dad. I didn't know. So now I'm panicking because I'm like, I'm trying to stay calm, but I'm like, did we really want to run away? Like, are we going to see our dad again? What is going on? Because like I said, my father was a phenomenal dad. Me and my sister, we never had no qualms. Like, we weren't afraid of him. We weren't scared of him like he would do something to us. We were scared for our mom because he would do something to her. And we saw it firsthand, them fighting. So that was scary. We didn't want him to do that. But we weren't like, we didn't want to be separated from our dad, though. This was a battered woman's shelter. We weren't there very long, but I do remember that being the first of like 13 other shelters and places that we ended up moving around to. Because the thing about the battered women's shelter that they don't tell you is that it's a lot of politics. Like, when you go into those shelters, for the most part, immediately they'll help you. But a lot of times there's like waiting lists for space for beds, and then if you have children, it's harder because they have to take up more space in the shelters and they can only house so many people at a time. This particular one that we went to was like almost like a group home or like a halfway house. The way that it was set up, you had a curfew. You couldn't be out past a certain time, like 7 p.m. or something. Everybody had to be back inside the building. And then there was the issue of food. They had to like ration the food that they were giving to the people who lived there. It's like you're at a soup kitchen. Like, whatever they can afford to give you, you would get your portion. And then that was it. You couldn't go and get more food. You couldn't pick what you wanted to eat. It was like whatever they made, that's what you ate. And again, we're coming from the comfort and luxury of home with our dad to this suddenly with no warning. Like, we're already traumatized. This is like this is a whole nother layer of trauma added to us already being traumatized from the fights that we would witness my mom and dad having. But, my mom, this is her only way out because she had no family members in America at the time. The only other way to do this is to run away to Korea, which later I found out my mom actually did do the last time we ended up in Korea before this move. But what happened was my father found out that she ran off with me and my sister. So he immediately got a plane ticket and followed us to Korea. He knew where my grandmother lived because we had lived there. He just found his way over to my grandmom's house and barged his way in and demanded that my mother work it out with him. And then they just basically got back together. I didn't know this at the time. I thought when we were going to Korea, it wasn't a big secret. I don't remember it being a secret. You know what I'm saying? This time, she was just in America. She ran away locally. The shelter was oh God, it was awful. I didn't like it. And I remember us having roommates. We had cots, not beds. And the room we were in, there were multiple people staying in that room. And some of the people that come to these places, they're on drugs. They have a lot of other issues and problems. And domestic violence is just one of them. You couldn't really sleep because you had to kind of watch. The people that were around, they might steal your things. They might go through your purse. They might do something weird to you, say something weird to you. And then there's women there, but they had sons. Some of them had male children that they had ran away with. So there was this layer of not danger, but caution that you had to have as a young girl because there were teenage boys there. So you just kind of felt uneasy. Oh, wow. That was my first experience at a battered woman shelter. We just bounced around to all these different places because they have a limited amount of time that you can stay in their shelters. So after that time is up, you have to have somewhere else to transition yourself out to. And if you don't have that lined up, they will literally just kick you out. They'll just be sorry, your contract's up, your time is up, bye. They'll just drop you off on a street corner someplace and wish you the best of luck. That's reality. That's what happens at battered women shelters. So it's only an immediate fix. It's only an immediate help. It's not long lasting. If you are someone who does not have resources or family members outside of your household that can aid you in your transition out of a domestic violence situation, keep that in your mind when you try to figure out how to utilize government or state or local community resources like shelters. They exist, but it's not all white and black whatever you're thinking it is when you are at home. You won't have the same luxuries, the same comforts, the same choices, the same food, the same access to things that you had when you were at home. And if that's going to somehow affect you really bad, you need to prepare for that when you're figuring out how to run away from a situation if it's really dangerous for you. I'm talking about this stuff from the perspective of a child. So it might sound like I'm kind of ungrateful or annoyed by the fact that we left like that, but the adult, my mother at that time, was trying to protect herself and us the best she could, and this was the only option for her. So that's what she had to do. But it may not be for you. So I'm saying if you are someone in that situation and you are highly contemplating running away, first try to find people in your life that you interact with, your friends and your family members. Even the family members of that person who's abusing you, sometimes they can be a resource. So don't think that because it's that person's family members, they can't help you. No way. If my son put his hands on his wife and they felt like they were in danger, I would get a restraining order on my son. I would not even tell him if I could help it that I was helping them. I would put them up in a hotel. I would hide them in my house. I would rent an apartment for them. I would figure some way. I would send them to my family members somewhere. I would do what I could to help those kids and the wife get out of that situation, and then go counsel my son. Go step to my son yo, what's going on? We need to figure this out because you can't be abusing your family. So don't think that because the person is related to that other person that they're going to sell you out. It really just depends on your relationships with those people and and their own personalities. My mother obviously didn't think she had that resource because my dad's family members were in denial. She did tell us that she stepped to, I'm not going to name specifics. I will say my grandmom was one of them, but she's dead now. So it's not I really have to worry about her reputation being thrown on the train tracks. But some of these people are still around, some of them aren't. But she did mention to me that multiple family members she had gone to for help and begged them to put him in rehab so that he could at least get some kind of help for the drug problems and alcohol problems that he had. But they kind of just shoot her away and was like, whatever, you're crazy. Because, again, abusers tend to play psychological games with you and people around you so that they can isolate you. And when you do go asking for help, people may not know whether or not they can help you because they will believe this charming person who's telling them,
oh, they're nuts, they're crazy. Everybody knows they're crazy. Be careful, don't get too close. I figured out how to deal with this person, but you guys, I don't want you guys getting victimized by them. So if they ever come at you and say, oh, he did this to me, she did that to me, you might want to come, let me know. Don't just believe them.
And those people have more of a rapport with him, so of course they're going to believe him. So that was a situation that my mother was facing. She had to deal with it, and that's why we ended up at this place. But anyway, we weren't there that long. But that's how my mother had gotten us out of that situation. She did not end up going back to my dad, but for another, I want to say, year to 2 years, my mother struggled with other things that affected all of us. And in the meantime, my dad ended up dying from a heroin overdose. But if you ask my mom, she'll say, oh, he just had a heart attack. Yeah, a heart attack that was induced by his heroin. But anyway, but because he died, I think that's why she didn't end up going back. Obviously. But what I'm saying is, if he hadn't died, my mother was contemplating going back to my dad because she thought the leave would scare him enough. Like, my dad doted on me and my sister. Like, he adored us. So not having us around put him into a downward spiral mentally, and he was really depressed. Like, I remember my Uncle Ben telling me stories about how when he would see my dad, he'd just be pacing back and forth, completely just going out of his mind. Like, I need my girls. I need my girls. Where are my girls? I need to find them. I need to get them back. And he was pissed that me and my sister were gone. And I think that my dad really loved us. Like, he was like, he didn't just like love us. I mean, to my dad, the way people feel about their pets, like, their pets, it's different the way you love your pet than how you love your child. Your child, like, in your mind that at some point you're going to have to let them go. They have to live the majority of their life away from you, seeking their own life. You know that as a parent. So you have a certain level of attachment to your children, but, like, you just know in the back of your mind, this cannot last forever. With your pet, it's different. It's like you have this authority and ownership over them, but at the same time, you're protective over your pet. But at the same time, your pet provides comfort to you. So there's no prospect of when my pet grows up, it's going to go off and be someone else's pet. Like, you don't think that. You're like, until this pet drops dead, it's going to be around me, or until I die. Like, we're just partners. We're going to be around each other. We're going to comfort each other. It's down for me. That's how you think of your pet. So that's what I mean when I say I think my dad looked at me and my sister like he would a pet. Not like that. Not that. I don't mean that in like a demeaning kind of a way. I mean, like, the type of feelings he had for us was more that we comforted him. We were a reflection of him. He had something to live for. He had something to strive to better himself for. And just these empty pockets he could just fill up with knowledge. Like, that was me and my sister for him. That's what he loved about us being around. And then because we were half Korean, like, we looked different from other children. So when we were around him, we got him a lot of attention. And I think I mentioned this in my intro video. My dad's personality, he was just a very charming guy. Like, he was he was a performer. Duplicating the feeling of the audience staring at you when you're on stage, I feel like that's what we gave to my dad when we would be out with him. People would stop all the time and, like, be like, oh my God, oh, your family's so beautiful. Oh, these are your kids. They just wanted to look at us because they had never seen Blasian kids before. It was just like, we were not a dime a dozen back then. We were unicorn. I understand how, being 30-something years old, how you would feel like that about your children. When my mother just disappeared in the middle of the night with us, he was in shock. He didn't know what to think. He didn't know what to do. There was no notes. He didn't know what was going on, right? Eventually, he found out that we had ran away and that my mom, I don't know if she had a restraining order, but like they knew it was a domestic violence case. So the courts made him do like supervised visits with us, and we had to go to like some facility, like this big like community center or something, where mad other kids were there with their parents visiting. It felt like a prison visit. Like it felt like a jail visit. Like it was so weird. We just sit at this table. It was fucking awkward as hell. Like I remember my cousin being there, my aunt, my cousin's mom being there, my dad, my grandmother. I remember feeling very dissatisfied with our visits because my mother would drill into us before we would go see him. Do not tell him where you live. If he tries to ask you things like that, just keep saying, I don't know. I don't know. Ask my mom. I don't know. And the pressure of being on this visit with him and not being able to tell him where we were was like eating away at me. Like I was concentrating so hard on not accidentally saying the wrong thing that I think I just blurred my way through that visit. That's why I don't remember what conversations my dad had with us. I feel like my dad did ask us where we lived, trying to figure out where we were, but I was prepped for it. Like I knew not to answer him, so I somehow bumbled through it and like didn't give him the information. My father was ex-military and his profession in the military was communications, and this is before the time of GPS. My father was like a genius when it came to directions, navigation. Like he was so smart when it came to that. So my mother truly believed if we told him anything, if we told him there's a gas station around the corner from our house called blah blah blah, like he would figure out where we were at. We didn't even live in the same state with him. We were in Massachusetts, I think. So even though we had moved states away, my mother was terrified that he would find out. She was scared for her life, but she was still contemplating going back. If he could convince her that he had truly changed. She told me that her criteria was that he join rehab, complete it, get baptized, because he had been studying the Jehovah's Witness religion for years. But they don't actually consider you an official member of their church until you're baptized within the church. He never actually got baptized because he didn't want to give up the vices, the alcohol and the drugs. He was too addicted to that. I don't think that he had it in him at that time to let that stuff go. He couldn't. He was addicted. So, but my mother wanted him to because she just felt like him having religion as a constant reminder to better himself would help him to stay on a clean path once he completed his rehab. And once she had confirmation that he had done those things, she was willing to contemplate going back to him. But instead, he ended up ODing. And I was mad at him for years for doing that, for killing himself accidentally with the drugs, because when it was all said and done, I felt like we lost some years together, but we couldn't pick up where we left off. And because we have a strong enough bond with our dad, we'd be able to pick up where we left off. And the two of them would just be separated, but it would be okay. We would be able to have a relationship. And I missed out on that because he died. And that just felt like such a waste. Like, oh my God. That's it. I'm never going to see my dad again. That's it. That's it. I didn't get to say bye to him. I didn't get to say anything. I didn't even know he died until like a year after he died. So I was so angry when I found out about how he died. I always blamed him. I always felt like you did it to yourself. Why did you do this? I do believe in God, and I believe in law of attraction. I believe in the universe shifting things to fit your needs and the things that you attract to yourself. I think my mother probably would have ended up dying if she had gone back to my dad, because he was not ready to be a husband. He needed more time. He needed more training. And if she had went back, I think he could have lured her back, because he was that charming and that smart that he could fool people into believing that his rehab worked. I know that sounds insane, but I know how my dad was. We joke around a lot that my dad was a really good bullshit artist. I mean, think about it. There are people who are like natural born con men, and I feel like that's kind of how my dad was. Not a con man that's obvious, like you know this guy's trying to swindle you. No, he was the type of dude that if you guys ever watched Leonardo DiCaprio and Catch Me If You Can, like that personality that he can fool people in such a way because he can read people quickly and like figure out this person needs to hear me say this and they'll let their guard down. He knew how to do that. That is what I think he would have used to get through rehab, and then it would have been just enough work for him to prove to my mother that he did it. The baptism, he wouldn't have wanted to do it, but I think he would have done it for the end result of getting me and my sister back in his care. Would he have slid off the path? Yeah, he would have, because he never got any help for his temper problem. He had a bad temper and he didn't know how to cope with his anger, and he couldn't he couldn't deal with the alcoholism and the drug addiction functionally enough to not hurt people while he was drunk and on drugs. People do drugs and drink to a point where I guess you could say that they're alcoholics or drug addicts, and usually the bulk of the damage is done just to themselves. Like they're just neglecting themselves. But with my dad, he was affecting people around him. He was affecting my mom the most because she was around him the most. And because my mom, she wasn't an enabler. She didn't just sit around like helping him get drunk and do drugs and making excuses. She was constantly like on his ass about it. She didn't like it. I think he would have just done enough to get us back there, but then his anger would have just took over again and he would have done something really bad to my mom. The problem with these domestic violence situations is that it doesn't get better. It just keeps getting worse. The more you put up with, the more you let that person get away with, the less accountability they have, the more extreme the behavior becomes, and it just escalates. The universe or God knew that it would have been a disaster if my mother had gone back. So I think this is why his life was allowed to be ended when it did, because there would have been nothing to prevent my mom from going back to my dad. She probably would have ended up dead. My dad would have ended up in jail because he would have been the one to kill her. Then me and my sister would have been orphans and nobody would be able to care for us in the way we needed. We would have been cared for on a superficial level because both sides of my family financially would have been able to care for us. There's no guarantee that my sister and I would not have been split up. We wouldn't have done well with at that time. Even if we had stayed together, just emotionally, I don't think that we would have been able to be helped by our family members at that time, because my dad's side of the family were in denial that my dad even had a problem. So they wouldn't have wanted to talk about it. There is no talking about it without talking about his problem. So if you're not going to talk about the problem, then there's no talking about it. Like to this day, sometimes when I bring up this stuff, they will be very quick to change the subject. They don't want to talk about it because it's an ugly truth that it's difficult for people to accept about their own family members. There still would have been some level of blame on my mom provoking my dad to this level where he feels he has to get physically violent. So that would have been a disaster. I would have probably ended up rebelling against my family and just having a very bad outlook on life, because I would know what the truth was but feel some type of way that like I can't talk about it with anyone. If we had went to my mom's side of the family, again, financially we would have been okay, but emotionally we would have been very empty because my mom's side is not that affectionate. This last like year that I've been interacting with my grandma before she died, that's the only time I've actually heard her say the words "I love you." I always knew she loved us because she would say it in a roundabout way, but like she would never just say it. Like we would have felt like the adopted kids or something because we look different from our cousins, like on each side. So not having that type of physical affection from our parents or our loved ones, I know it would have affected me negatively a great deal. We would have experienced that with my Korean side of the family more. Somewhere along the way, we would have just been really lost and confused and angry, dysfunctional, and felt like we don't belong anywhere. If my dad had killed my mom because she went back to him. I'm grateful, as sad as that sounds, that it happened that way, because I think that gave us a chance to truly escape that environment. Because my mom has so many problems and such a horrible judgment of people, which I attribute to what I think is autism that she has. She has not been diagnosed because she refuses to go see anyone, but I'm pretty sure she has it. And because she has problems dealing with people in a social setting, I think our problems didn't end there. That kind of set off the tread pattern, I guess, that set off the momentum for the next traumatic events to come down the line, that my mom, I think, attracted to herself with her energy and her attitude and her thought process. As uncomfortable as it was for us, it had to happen so that we could survive. If you are going through this, if you know someone who is going through this, try your best to figure out what support system you have of your friends and family members. If it's a complete emergency and you just have to escape, then definitely go the shelter route. But again, those shelters have waiting lists. Like, sometimes they're not just ready to open their doors to you. The place that we went to, I think we had to travel so far because that was a place that had an open spot that was closest to where we were. And from my experience jumping around from place to place, state to state, from shelter to shelter, that's why I think we ended up moving so much and so far, because the places that were more local did not have room for us. So we would have to travel farther away. But I hope this video did help somebody with anything, something. Oh my God, I didn't realize I was in an abusive relationship until just now. Like, even if that is all that you get out of this, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you have answers to the questions that people are asking, even if they're directing the questions to me, please feel free to give them feedback and information. People are desperate for help. But absolutely, if you feel your life is in danger, or planning how you can physically defend yourself, if that is your life, you are in danger. Like, if you don't realize that, I'm telling you, you're in danger. You need to get away. To save your life or the safety of your kids, I think it's worth it. You should do it. If you do have the opportunity to plan, definitely make a plan and then start executing your plans. If you decided to subscribe, thank you. If you don't subscribe, that's fine, but I do hope that you will do something to bookmark my channel so that you will have a resource you can come back to. I'm not one of those people that care about like hate comments or people talking shit. Like, I don't really give a shit. I do not condone people attacking my subscribers or my viewers. And even if someone's joking, like, that could affect someone who's on the brink of like committing suicide. I tend to attract pretty intelligent audience members who have sense and know better than to do things like that. But it's the internet. Once in a blue moon, you still run across ignorant people who just think they can get away with doing whatever they want. If any of this triggers memories for you, or if you need help, say what you need to say in the comments. And if anybody says anything that looks inappropriate, I will remove the comment so you don't have to worry about that. Thank you so much for watching, and peace out.